Tom Hunt.
Mr Deputy Speaker. That's, again, slightly sooner than I expected. This is the second time I've addressed the House after my maiden speech, and of course I want to touch upon the important issue of NHS funding and ensuring that my constituents in Ipswich get the best possible deal. Mr Deputy Speaker, may I start by saying I welcome the NHS funding bill, which will give our NHS the biggest cash increase in its history. The money will support the delivery of our NHS long-term plan, 40 new hospitals, 50,000 more nurses, 6,000 more doctors, which we promised in our manifesto. And of course, all of this is built upon solid Conservative economic foundations. Mr Deputy Speaker, I'll be working hard to ensure that Ipswich receives its fair share of this funding. This is so important, Mr Deputy Speaker, because the disparities between Ipswich and East Anglia and the rest of the country are real and often pronounced. Indeed, Mr Deputy Speaker, clinical commissioning group funding per patient is over £100 lower in Ipswich and East Suffolk than the average in England. And we must keep an eye on the funding formula to ensure that areas including Ipswich are getting the funding for the services they need. These include GP services, where our GP to population ratio has fallen behind, and many local residents say they struggle to get an appointment when they need one. Mr Deputy Speaker, we have a unique opportunity in this Parliament to make a real difference to parts of the country which have felt left behind, and I will do everything I can to ensure that this message is heard loud and clear.
Will my honourable friend give way on that point?
I'll give way.
Thank you. Would you agree that, as part of that levelling up priority, that it's really important that we restore some of our services in existing hospitals, such as the A&E at Bishop Auckland Hospital?
Absolutely, of course. The levelling up agenda, it touches many parts of the country, in North of England, but also East Anglia as well. So I agree with the honourable member for Bishop Auckland. I would like to use this opportunity to touch upon a recent inspection report of the East Suffolk and North Essex NHS Foundation Trust by the Care Quality Commission. The trust was formed following a merger of Ipswich and Colchester hospitals in July 2018. The inspection gave a trust rating of requires improvement. This is, of course, disappointing, but had just one of 80 criteria in the inspection been different, the trust would have received a good rating. We should also hesitate before drawing direct comparisons between the last inspection 5 years ago, which rated Ipswich Hospital good, and the latest inspection, which was uncovered both Colchester and Ipswich Hospital, a hospital that was previously rated requires improvement. Nevertheless, the report's recommendations for improvement will be important to bear in mind as we consider health funding going forward. Cutting referral waiting times, improving capacity for emergency mental health care, and ensuring staff have the right training to provide patients with the correct care were all mentioned in the report, and these are areas that must be priorities going forward. I therefore welcome the provision in the NHS long-term plan for better training opportunities for NHS staff, as well as additional staff and funding for mental health services. I trust that the Government will closely consider the specific needs of Ipswich and those of East Anglia as these plans move forward, in the interest of levelling up the whole of the country. Indeed, Mr Deputy Speaker, planning permission has recently been approved for a brand new £35 million A&E department at Ipswich Hospital, which is expected to open in spring 2022. I, of course, would look forward to an invitation to cut the ribbon. This new department will make a real difference for over 100,000 people, and 100,000 people it would treat every year. And I hope the Government will recognise this and continue to support further significant upgrades in Ipswich going forward. Investment has been confirmed for a new orthopaedic centre in East Suffolk and North Essex by 2024. I know many in Ipswich are concerned that it may be located in the centre of Colchester. I want my constituents to know that I'll be closely monitoring developments around the new orthopaedic centre to ensure that they'll be able to access these services smoothly with minimal disruption. I will endeavour to ensure that if the orthopaedic centre is located in Colchester, patients only have to go there for main operations, and all other appointments should be made in the hospital closest to them. The key point, Mr Deputy Speaker, is that these twin investments, the new A&E department in Ipswich and the new orthopaedic centre, wherever it may be located, may not have happened had a merger into a single trust not taken place. The merger of the Ipswich and Colchester hospitals has the potential to provide a critical mass when it comes to delivering the resources local people need for their health and well-being. A further example of this is that since the merger, radiotherapy treatments for cancer patients at Ipswich have been maintained in Ipswich at the same rate when there are fears they might have been moved elsewhere. Plus, in addition to this, staff vacancy rate, which was 12% before the merger, is now 9%. I would therefore like to call on the Government to further communicate the benefits of the merger, to give people confidence in the system and give them every reassurance that both Ipswich and Colchester hospitals can improve together, rather than have a situation where one hospital drags another one down. It must be the case that when you have two hospitals that come together, the good one drags up the one which is struggling and not the other way round. Mr Deputy Speaker, I will continue to have a watchdog role when it comes to the merger, Mr Deputy Speaker. Some of the initial improvements are positive, particularly the new A&E department in Ipswich, but I will not hesitate to question any developments which may not be in Ipswich residents' interests. Mr Deputy Speaker, before I move my speech on from a recent inspection report, it would be remiss of me not to also congratulate our local NHS staff in Ipswich, who have been identified as delivering outstanding practice in critical care, maternity services and community health inpatient services, as well as good levels of practice in many other areas. I would also like to pay particular tribute to members of the Indian community in Ipswich, who fill many of the roles in our local NHS services. Their commitment and dedication to their work is unquestionable. The role of the Indian community play in our local NHS is one of the driving reasons why I wish to express my wholehearted support for the government's plan to attract the top talent from around the world to work in the NHS after Brexit, to help provide the vital services we rely upon every day. It's important we prioritise those who have the most to contribute, and I'm glad that the government has identified this as a priority component of a new Australian-style points-based immigration system that we will be bringing with a preferential visa system for those seeking to work in the NHS. Mr Deputy Speaker, I recently met with the Chief Executive of Ipswich Hospital, who has invited me to visit the hospital shortly to meet all of the hard-working staff there. I look forward to hearing further further how we can work together to improve the hospital we both care for passionately. Mr Deputy Speaker, I wish to make one final key point. It's to do with NHS resources. And it's incredibly important to my constituents, but also the public as a whole. I mentioned earlier Ipswich's new A&E department. The business case for this project took almost a year to approve, when it should have taken a matter of months. For every month of delay, I understand the cost to the taxpayer was around £167,000. This is mainly due to inflation and increased building costs, which resulted from that. I'm well informed that the approval process for big NHS capital schemes is too archaic, and that part of the problem is the merger of NHS Improvement and NHS England, that the new organisation has not had time to streamline its approvals process. As well as additional investment, Mr Deputy Speaker, we must ensure hard-earned taxpayers' cash is being used efficiently at every stage of healthcare provision. I urge the government to take this into account too, as we Conservatives continue our long and proud stewardship of the NHS.
The time